This is the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as Nidhi and I have a conversation about the mundane. One thing we can promise is that our conversation will be less than fascinating, so you can feel free to just drift off. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will listen and sleep. I'm your host, Marco Timpano.
And I'm your co-host, Nidhi Khanna. Marco, I got a bit of feedback from a colleague of mine who was listening to our podcast while traveling lately.
Right.
And she was listening while she was on the plane, and she said that she has trouble falling asleep when she's on a plane, and she was traveling for business, and it was really important that she got a nap. So she put on our podcast and actually fell asleep. So
Wow.
I was very, very happy about that.
I never thought of this podcast being a podcast for travel, but it would be a nice thing to have to listen to when you're on a flight and you need a distraction if you worry when you're on flights, or if you can't sleep on flights because of the noise of the flight attendants or the person next to you if they're moving around, or bumping your elbow.
Wings or all those noises that happen on the plane.
Sure. Or when you're in the air and you're trying to get comfortable, the lights are dim if you're going on a long flight, and everyone's kind of sleeping and whatnot, and you're sitting next to the person who has the light on and they're clicking away, click 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 on their computer, and you're like, I just need a distraction, and you can't listen to the music that's on the plane anymore or watch any more movies because they're just going to keep you up. Well, then listen and sleep with us, the Insomnia Project. So that's so wonderful to hear that your colleague or your friend was able to use us as a means of sleep. We should mention that if you do have any comments like that, of course you could tell us directly, or you can go to our Twitter handle at Listen and Sleep and let us know how you use our podcast.
Marco, I want to talk about nail care for a second. Nail care traditionally has been something that I think has been more towards the female segment of the population.
Sure.
Filing your nails, going for a manicure.
Of course.
But you yourself are a hand model, and so you have a very elaborate nail care regime that you go through.
You could say that.
Yeah, particularly when you're booking a hand gig.
That's right. We should just state there, because a lot of people are going to think perhaps we're pulling their leg, but in fact I have, and I continue to do hand work for both print and television, and I've worked with some large organizations, from a cola company that I'm sure you're well acquainted with, to a
furniture company,
to a paint product company, to a fast food chain. I've done hand work for all those people, so it's true, I am a hand model.
And I think what we will do is maybe post a picture of your hands on social media so people can see what we're talking about, because when I first saw your hands, I wasn't thinking immediately, oh, he must be a hand model, but
it's interesting you should say that. I've always, and I say this to friends of mine, and people say, how did you get into hand modeling or hand work? And I've always disliked my hands.
Really?
I have. My dad has really big hands, so really big worker's hands, and I always thought as a child I would have big worker hands, and I don't. My hands are pretty...
Well, they're not dainty by any means.
No, but they're not. They're not. You wouldn't look at my hands and think, oh, those are strong hands that do construction or work the land, right?
Right.
So
I think that's because of your elaborate nail care regime.
Perhaps it is. But when I was shooting a commercial one day, the director liked my hands and sent the hand model home, and the crew said, you have very steady hands, which is a trait that one needs if you're holding a product and they're doing a close-up, for example, on a tablet for headaches that I did. They got an extreme close-up of my hand, and they had to, show the product in my hand. So as a result of that, I do have an extreme nail regime. or hand regime, I should say, I make sure that my nails are kept nice and trim, but not too trim because they like to see a little bit of white around the nail, or yeah, the top of the nail, I guess you could say. And I make sure that my cuticle is well moisturized so that it is never dry and crackling. And I use a bunch of different products for my hands. And you would think, what would you think that the product I use?
I'm going to say that you use some sort of, very expensive moisturizing hand repair lotion of some sort.
I do not. What I found that works best on my hand is products that are used for livestock. So, for example, for my nails, I use a cream that they use on horses' hooves to keep them strong. But to keep my hands really moisturized, I use this product called Bag Balm, which is a product that dairy farmers will use on the udders of their dairy cows, because the milking machine will be very abrasive on the udders, and as a result they can get little scratches and whatnot, and they can get chafed. And so they use this product on their cows to make sure that the udders are supple and soft, and if there's any sort of cut, it gets repaired. And so at night I will use this product called Bag Balm on my hands, and I'm telling you, the next day my hands are soft and supple and really quite lovely.
And so do you have to use any sort of protective, like gloves on top of that? Or?
Sometimes I'll wear gloves if I know I have something that I'm filming and I'm leaving the home. I will make sure that I have gloves on, which is fine during the winter. It looks very normal. But in warmer months, wearing gloves outside seems a little strange. But injuries to hands will happen. The majority of injuries that happen to hands will be knives in the sink or with doors. You don't realize that because you open doors all the time, but there's always a door that is either stuck or opens too fast, and you cut your hand, or you crush your hand, or you nick your hand, and people on the street might bump into you. I had a cyclist run into me one day when I had a hand commercial I was filming the next day, and luckily it was in the summertime. I had gloves on and nothing happened. And I remember people looking at me strange because I had gloves on, but I was so grateful that day that I was wearing gloves when the cyclist, who shouldn't have been on the sidewalk, ran into me. What is your hand regime? Or your nail care regime?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say it now, Marco, after that, but I have a very simple hand care regime. I will go for a manicure, pedicure every once in a while, but for my nails, particularly my fingernails, I don't like having very long fingernails.
Oh. Your fingernails are actually very short. Yeah.
They have a really nice shape, like they're naturally round, which I like, and so I have minimal filing needs. I could probably use a bit of the cuticle oil that you use, but I like kind of I hardly ever wear nail polish on my fingernails. I prefer to focus on my feet with regards to any sort of nail care, but I'm very, very low maintenance with them.
Why don't you wear any polish on your nails?
I find it cumbersome because after a few days it'll start chipping, and my nails actually grow incredibly fast. And so even if I were to I had gel nails for a really long time.
What is a gel nail? I don't even know what that is.
So a gel nail was kind of all the rage before they had this whole shellac movement, which shellac is nail polish that essentially the material that it's made out of lasts quite long on your nails.
So it's a very strong sort of polish, is that safe to say?
Correct. But before that, a lot of people used to get gel nails, and those nails would last a long time as well, but it would go over under a UV light.
But is that a fake nail, or is that your actual nail?
It goes onto your actual nail.
So it's like a fake nail that gets glued to your nail, is that correct?
It's not a fake nail the way, Yes, I guess, sort of. So it's not a fake nail in the way that you'll see sort of those peel off
Those
nails.
press-on nails, right?
Exactly. It is like a coating that goes onto your nails that they put under UV lights to kind of melt it into your nail, for lack of a
Melt the
better word.
polish or melt of
That whatever that
like a
substance.
plastic nail?
I get, yeah.
Because
It's not a plastic nail. It's like a gel.
okay, so a gel type nail that will harden when you do
Yes,
that. I see.
correct.
Okay.
So I used to get that done very long, but for a really long time. But what I noticed was my nails would grow so quickly that I would have to continuously get them re-gelled
Or
and filled,
right?
over and over on too frequent a basis, and so it would really ruin my nails. And when I took off my gel nails for the last time, it took me a few months for my nails to get back to their normal state, I guess.
I see.
Healthy state. So I no longer do that, and similar to that in with shellac, the problem is my nails grow so quickly that by the time I'm a week or so in, like, it's very noticeable, and I have to constantly go back to the nail technician to
I see.
get them redone, and I just don't have time for that.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's Nidhi's nail care regime.
Exactly.
And
Minimalist nail care
I
regime.
really dislike going to the manicurist. And I'll have to go every once in a while when I book a gig, and they're like, go see a manicure or a manicurist and get a manicure, because they often want to shape my nails in not the half moon shape that they're in, but more in a longer or square shape, and
Right.
that's not what they want on camera. So I'm
Right.
often really coarse when I'm talking to these people who are doing my nails and saying, no, don't do it like that. And so it's often I go to get my nails done at a manicure shop, and it is not a good time for me. And sometimes I'll go with Amanda, so my wife will come with me to get my nails done, and she usually finds it very relaxing and therapeutic, but when she goes with me, she gets stressed because she's like, you're always so tense when they're doing your nails.
It's funny that you should mention your wife Amanda. We've done a few episodes now, and one of the recurring themes that we seem to run into is talking about your wife, who is not only your wife, but a very close friend of mine.
Right.
And I'm thinking that next episode, Marco, we should really have her on here to co-host an episode, because I think our listeners would be interested in hearing a bit more about this mysterious, ethereal Amanda that we continually talk about.
Sure, I think it'd be great. She's often making us tea while we're on, or last week she was making us coconut banana bread as we were recording our episode. She's like, by the time you're done, you'll have some of this delicious bread, which we did have.
It's true.
So we'll ask her, and we'll see if we can get her on for the next episode.
So stay tuned for that, folks.
Now, Nidhi, you and I were thinking about how people index books and magazines, because when I was growing up, we had to learn the Dewey Decimal System. And I remember mentioning it to a younger friend of mine, and they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was saying, well, when you go to the library and he's like, no, now we just type it in the computer. But there was a time where you would look in index cards for the book that you wanted, and it was called the Dewey Decimal System of indexing, how they used to index those books. Do you remember that at all?
I do, Marco. I remember using that in the library for grade school projects and even for high school projects, even though I think by the time I graduated high school, they were starting to get more and more into indexing on computers, essentially. But I do remember, and it was a very complicated system. I remember it not being very intuitive in terms of looking for what you needed to get.
I think there was a series of numbers that represented different subjects. So, for example, if you wanted something in science, with the Dewey Decimal System, it would be under a category of numbers, which of course I don't know at this moment. But It's amazing how that has sort of disappeared. It's probably still used within the library system, but now if I want a book from my library, I just go online. I type in the book that I want, and I can have it delivered to the closest library near my home, and they will either call or send me an email when the book is there for pickup.
I'm curious, I'm curious to hear from some librarians about if the Dewey Decimal System is currently being used, and if so, how it's being used. Is it something that they're completely has it been completely phased out from reference libraries,
Sure.
etc., or is it something that has kind of taken on a different form? I don't know. That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out from a librarian. So if there's a librarian listening who would like to sort of give us insight or perhaps come on our podcast, send us a tweet at Listen and Sleep, and we'll figure out what happened to the Dewey Decimal System. Now, Nidhi, how do you index things in your home, like magazines or books that you currently have?
I am, I usually, what I have to say when it comes to books, I don't have a particular indexing system.
Okay.
So I'm not.
Do you have a shelf that you put them on, or is there?
I do have a shelf, but it's kind of a mishmash.
I see.
I'm not a very good indexer that way. Like, I won't look at my bookshelf and say, okay, all magazines, like a magazine subscription doesn't
Sure.
have to go from January, February, like
I see.
in sequential order, or I don't necessarily put my books by author or topic.
Right.
I'm a little bit more abstract that way.
Fair.
But I do notice that I index things on my computer.
Okay.
Like, if things are not sorted in the right files, and I think you're a bit like this too, I feel like it gets cluttered and it really bothers me.
It's interesting you should say that. I've become much more organized after watching how you organize your computer system. And I find that I am a bit of a folder, or like a mini tab whiz, if you will. And I think I get that from you. With regards to magazines, we try in our home after a certain amount of months to get rid of our magazines by not throwing them out, but what we'll do is we'll often take them to the doctor's office, or there's a nursing home near us, and we'll go and donate them. The only thing I recommend for anyone who might be donating magazines, if you get a subscription to a magazine, oftentimes it'll have your address on a little tab of some sort, or like on a sticky that's on the actual magazine, or some magazines will print your address. And what I recommend is, if you have a black permanent marker, to go over it a few times so that it saturates the address until it's blacked out.
That's really interesting, Marco. Marco, tell me about a time when you really looked at, like, that moment where you're like, ooh, this is complicated math.
Ooh. Outside of school, would you say?
Either or.
Okay. I've never been really strong at math. But, sometimes when you're figuring out your accounting for tax purposes, and you're looking at various, things you can claim and whatnot, oftentimes here in Canada, we have to pay HST, and I have an HST number. So with the HST number, which is a harmonized sales tax that is on some of our goods for people who are listening outside of Canada, and I'll have to figure out the HST for my taxes, so that whatever HST that I pay for business can then come back to me. And sometimes that can get a little bit complicated. I find that accounting for taxes, I enjoy that math, and I enjoy doing it. I have a very interesting system where I file in an accordion folder, and I put all my receipts and I separate them, and then I'll separate the receipts between business expenses and non-business expenses. And from there, I have another book that I transfer all those numbers together, add them up, I meet with my accountant, and then go forward from there. How about yourself? What's your accounting system, or a time when you found math to be really tricky?
Well, I actually ended up doing health sciences up until university.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So I did stats and I did advanced calculus, and I couldn't do that again today because I do not remember most of what those classes were about.
Okay.
But I remember thinking this math is quite difficult,
Right.
especially when I was doing calculus 2 and things like that, derivatives and
Isn't that like on the calculator where there's all those little buttons that you never use if you have a mathematical calculator like cosine and whatnot? Are those things you would use in those classes?
so the sine, cosine, etc. I think that's trigonometry.
Okay.
So that's, I think, high school first year. I think it's high school
Sure.
actually. And that's all about angles and about like triangles, and
Sure.
kind of is developed from the Pythagorean theory.
Pythagoras.
Yes, Pythagoras,
yeah.
exactly. If I remember correctly. But calculus was really about like breaking down a formula and trying to find like what the root of that formula was about. You needed to do it in order to get into medical school, etc.
Is that something you were thinking of getting into?
I was
Oh.
thinking of being a doctor.
That's
I
so
quickly-
interesting because if you speak to Amanda and I, we often this debate. When I was thinking of going to university, I was thinking of going in for
Medicine?
medicine as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off. but
not at
yeah.
all. No, so I think after taking calculus, and quite frankly, after taking organic chemistry, I think once I took organic chemistry, I said, I don't think this whole medicine thing is for me.
Well, there you go.
So,
Had both of us gone into medicine, we would probably not be doing this podcast today. So it's very good fortune for our listeners.
It's true.
Who enjoy the Insomnia
although
Project.
we might be actually looking at the medical side of insomnia.
I was hoping to get into cardiothoracics. That's what that was sort of my goal, was cardiothoracics.
Thoracics.
And then my life turned a different direction and I got into the arts and I enjoyed that. And
It's funny how we both wanted to be in medicine, and then we both ended up going for the arts.
well, what's funny, and we talked about it this off the top of the show, is that I have very steady hands. And so I don't remember if that played into why I wanted to go into medicine and possibly become a surgeon, but that, would play into whether or not I could become a surgeon.
Have you ever played in your as an entertainer, as an actor? Have you ever played a role, like a medical role, before?
Oh, that's a great question. I once played the second officer who was an engineer flying a blimp. So that was the closest to, and I don't know if this was an actual person who flew this blimp, and I was the second in command in flying a blimp. That was the closest I've come to
Any sort of
medicine.
medicine or engineering?
But one of my dream roles would be that of a surgeon.
Yeah, I remember I used to watch that show, ER, as a kid
Yes.
in university.
That's the one that sort of put George Clooney on the map.
Yes. And I used to love it because I thought I was going to be a doctor, emergency room doctor like
Right.
them. And that wasn't to be. However, I quite enjoy my life right now. so-
Sure. Well, there you go. At least you're not sort of in a ER
No.
dealing with the patients there. Instead, you're dealing
And using math.
and using math, which
Yeah.
you didn't really enjoy, it seems.
No, I had a friend who became an actuarial mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have no clue what that really is.
It's funny. I have two friends who are actuarians,
Really?
and I don't know what they do either, but I know it involves a lot of math.
A lot of math, a lot of exams. They had to take like 7 or 8 exams to become an actuarial mathematician.
And I know there's really busy times for them. Because when I talk to them,
Right.
it's like, oh, this is a very busy time for my actuarial services.
Well, we've talked about getting a librarian on the show. Maybe we need to get an actuarial mathematician to break this down for us a little bit.
That wouldn't be a bad idea. If you know an actuarial mathematician, feel free to direct them to us. And we hope that this episode has brought you to a very lovely slumber. And if not, and you stayed to the end of this episode with us, we want to thank you and welcome you and invite you to subscribe to the Insomnia Project on iTunes.
As usual, we're broadcasting from Toronto, and you can find us online at Listen and Sleep. It's been our pleasure to host this podcast for you, and next week we will have Amanda Barker joining us to discuss all sorts of things to put you off into a slumber.